Howdy ho, everyone. Today I've compiled all my adventures in The Sims 1 into 1 hour-long video, combined, edited, and enhanced to create a movie marathon. After hours of living out the lives of several goofy, yet perhaps relatable protagonists, what remains at the core of The Sims is a story of upward mobility, a microcosm of our lives and careers playing out on the screen.
Growing up with The Sims taught me everything I needed to know about life. Managing my habits, social life, money, career, or so that's what I thought when I was a kid. Even after I've discarded so many gaming memories of my past, the series with its blend of emergent storytelling and outlandish writing and humor have always fascinated me as being way ahead of their time, and begged to return. I actually had to track down the physical discs on eBay to play this one. It's really difficult to find a way to play this game nowadays. So I feel that after all these years, I've finally earned the right to replay it. I was wondering for a challenge how I would manage my habits and my life to pull myself up by the bootstraps if I had $0 to start. We spawn into the neighborhood with nothing but an empty plot of land. Well, it's not truly empty. First we need to get rid of some trees, bushes, leaving us with only the non-negotiables, mailbox and trash can. Now's where the magic really happens. It's time to create our sim, the ambiguous family. The term family here means, just me, Brian, ambiguous. Now if we're going to want to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, we're going to need a character who's active and extremely neat. Basically, the American Psycho if he had to start out from scratch. A real lady killer, so to speak. We still have one problem though, and that's the fact that we have still $20,000 to our name. Well, now it's gone down to $16,500. We'll need to make a few poor financial decisions before Brian moves himself in. So, to delete all of our money, we're just going to pay the exorbitantly expensive landscaping fees to build an Everest of dirt on our plot, and then demolish it. Well, $16,500 later and we're broke. But not only that, we've also massacred the grass that lived in our yard and made our home much less inviting than it was even before. All that's left is just one small, sad pile of dirt. And that's essentially what our protagonist is anyway, so let's begin. It looks like Brian isn't completely hopeless. He's at least got the newspaper and a magazine. So long as we stay on our property and clean up after ourselves, we at least maybe won't be arrested. I mean, technically it's not illegal to just stand there on a pile of dirt that you purchased in the middle of the neighborhood. We can wait here while we look for a job and, oh my gosh, someone's coming. Part of upward mobility in The Sims involves befriending the locals, complimenting them, shaking their hands, and tolerating them when they menace you with hand puppets. So after babysitting Mortimer, who is a sociopath, and being slapped by his wife, Bella Goth, I deemed it a poor idea to continue socializing. People are volatile. At least it was keeping me sane for now. The bigger question was, how would I make it until tomorrow, before my first day of work as a slacker? This pile of dirt wasn't going to inhabit itself. Ah, the first day of work. A unique opportunity to impress the boss and make a good first impression. Despite starting with nothing, I'd been fortunate enough to inherit some magical supplies from the itinerant magician. How would I use these things to keep my mood up before the first workday? Geronimo! I ventured down the portal and out of my property into one of the only public areas I was allowed to visit, the Carnival. Using the outhouse and the public sink were my only options. I spent the rest of the afternoon reclining on a bench, trying to avoid suspicion. Back home before sundown to meet the local cats. And then, a desperate night of sleeping in a paper bag by the side of the road. Who will care for the homeless? Off to my first day of work. From 5 to 10 a.m. it's busy, busy, busy. 90 simoleons, cash for a day's wages. Unfortunately, enough to afford only the least expensive of chairs. So it's back into the portal and eating popcorn or cotton candy to avoid or at least stave off starvation. The truth is that you can fail this challenge if you don't feed your sim. It doesn't matter how much you wet yourself, sleep on the ground, or fail to sit. In truth, it is a desperate struggle. If I didn't raise money fast, my sim would start to break. The rich get richer, and the poor get children, or die trying. And The Sims is a timeless allegory for the struggle of the 99% against the 1%, the haves versus the have-nots. At long last, I obtained a chair, my first possession I cherished and guarded like a watchdog. There were those who sought to appropriate my chair, Claire the Bear, that ursine burglar who ran like Naruto, face forward to my trash. It's a rough world out there, and the poor are the most vulnerable, stealing from one another. Would you take more than just my trash? No. The Sims had a lot of weird NPCs. I spent the rest of the night intimidating the local raccoons and ignoring the skunk squatting on my land. If I just kept a positive attitude anyway, I could escape this poverty. At least I had a view of the stars, and my needs would be slowly met. Day 2 at my job, more suspicious leeching off of public utilities, and back home to return to my chair. For what furniture I lacked, I improvised. Working is fun, and the thought of things getting easier was a motivator to take my mind off of distractions. After all, what did I have to lose? I got it down to a beat. Work, mysterious portal, return home. And before long, I had raised enough capital to fund a couch acquisition. Not only could I sit, but also sleep. Now I had twice as many options, and by selling my magical equipment, I was able to pay the government my $16 of debt, then use the leftovers to fund a griddle purchase. Burgers, burgers, burgers! I was the king of burgers. I ate 6 of them, and then ejected lemonade. It was okay. Working is fun. I lost track of the days, meeting my needs, stifling the crying before I boarded the carpool for work, and before long, life improved. I got a TV. Every couple days, there was a new purchase, helping visualize the many hours I had given to my job and making ends meet. Though life was stabilizing, I sensed complacency and began to feel like everything was becoming a treadmill. Get up, go to work, come home, repeat. In pursuit of this vague new life, I attempted to break out of the trend of keeping up with the Johnsons by staging my household furniture in unique locations to invite the curiosity of passers-by, and hopefully start up a conversation, maybe some flirting, potentially a romance. I don't want to sound like I'm opposed to buying things. There's a silver lining to all this. In The Sims, your dreams can become reality for a simple dollar value. Eventually, you will be satisfied by your amazing furniture and all of the pleasure it brings you to stand around in it. Potential friends will admire you for your new renovations, your bathroom, your kitchen, and beg to be invited over to behold your rising wealth. Bulbous in public. New lava lamp, new bed, new wall, housewarming party. They were all but passing tastes of an illusory consumerist oasis in the middle of a desert. Was I really making any friends? I guess what I'm trying to say is that it was a double-edged sword. But the wealth was beginning to seem irrelevant. I still had to work. My friends still hated me. I sometimes fainted on the ground out of exhaustion and couldn't even enjoy the fruits of my labor. Even when I won over $1,000, there was no chance to breathe and learn. I was too depressed, running a treadmill of poverty, hypnotized. Keep buying things until you fake yourself into the illusion of a better lifestyle. What I really craved was freedom. There had to be another way, a way to subvert the system. I began to forego my rich possessions and opted for a lifestyle of poverty like the Stoics. Would voluntary suffering give me any deliverance from any of this? And so it was that I lost all sense of time. It's a hell of a grind getting out of poverty. Months of another damn day, all just to live in a literal Hooverville. Yes, it seemed that the game was rigged. Until finally, one day the phone rang. Off a spurious investment, I received an unexpected windfall. 550 simoleons. I reinvested my winnings in an antique I purchased. The genie lamp. What I would learn is the single greatest item in the game. At less than 400 simoleons, the genies are nefarious, crooked beings who usually terrorize you, but if you cope with their trickery and misdoing for long enough, you just might get lucky. At first it was mostly evil and nefariousness, but I reinvested my winnings in, yes, more genie lamps. You can use each of them once per day. It's simply that broken. It wasn't long before I was summoning many genies to my backyard. But it wasn't that easy. When I wished for friends, I got enemies. When I wished for money, I got bills. Humiliating. But try as I might, I was determined to sweat my way out of poverty, no matter what it took. I stayed home from work, and in my pajamas, I summoned genie after genie after genie, until finally, treasure, fountains, billiard tables, TVs, you name it. I could resell it all to gain riches. My house became something akin to a Bitcoin mining farm, albeit with magical spirits. Fortunately, when I lost, I didn't lose much, and I could always recoup my losses. Anyway, it helped that the repo man in The Sims 1 makes a lot of mistakes. And yes, after a few months of this, I did effort my way out of poverty. I don't want to say that the meaning of life is having nice things, but, well, The Sims brings me back to a simpler time. A time when happiness could be bought for a price tag and give you bliss. And so, after an unhealthy amount of rubbing, I escaped that cell, and I embraced my new life, blessed by magical powers to achieve vast, offensive levels of wealth. In The Sims, quitting your job and pursuing a creative passion for a living is an exciting adventure. But is it possible to survive living off the sales of your paintings alone? And what if you began the game as a starving artist without $1 to his name? I decided to put this idea to the test. Every sim has a set of skills: body, creativity, cooking, logic, mechanical, and charisma. Some of them help with career tracks. Others improve the quality of meals. And some of them, like creativity, can be used to actually earn money from household objects outside of the working world. For example, a sim who's good in mechanical skill can craft garden gnomes and sell those. Or the subject of today's test, a really creative sim can stay home from work and earn money by painting all day, then selling the paintings instead of showing up to a job. Meet Jebediah Dingleberry, hopeful artist, embarking on his exciting journey without $1 to his name. His only possession? A single easel. When you start off with your sim, all stats are 0. Your needs are met. It takes about half a day of labor to finish a painting, during which time you gain artistic skill. Seems like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, if it weren't for the fact that the first painting sells for $0. Because we had no creative skill to begin with. After a full day's work, 24 hours, we sell our second painting for 3 simoleons. But still not enough to survive by any means. Life is tough, and artists who are unable to entertain anyone have it even tougher. Unfortunately, this means that Jebediah will inevitably die of starvation. The rules of this challenge are 1. No jobs allowed, and 2. No spamming the genie lamp because it makes the game too easy. Fortunately, for every new resident, a magic man delivers some supplies, worth a bit of money. Combining this with the vast $3 profits we earn from our paintings, we renovate our home and prepare to meet death bravely. Although this generation of Jebediah I couldn't survive on art alone, what if Jebediah Dingleberry had left behind an heir? Meet Jebediah Dingleberry II, almost exactly the same as Jebediah Dingleberry I, suspenders and all. Perhaps aside from the new and unique selection of hat. Picking up right where his father left off, let's see if Jeb II can outpace his father in the economic rat race and achieve his own version of the so-called American dream, move out from his present state of living into a slightly less bad one, ready to hand it off like a baton to the next generation. Unfortunately, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and what started out with the best intentions quickly devolves into repetition of his father's mistakes. Jeb II, motivated by his father's grave which he keeps beside his hand-me-down easel as a reminder of what will probably become of him too, paints only a little better than his father and is still stuck in the economic trap inherited from his dad. But there's a silver lining. We can keep relying on the fact that we get a free delivery of magical furniture every time a new generation inherits the property. So although Jeb II will also die, he too will pass down a couple $100 more worth of furniture to his own heir. So it continues, and maybe you can feel it deep in your own bones too. That timeless struggle to become better, to build on the foundation your own father left for you, and your father's father, and your father's father's father. You know how this story goes. Jeb III's life was brief and regrettable, but not as brief and regrettable as his dad's. And with every line, there's always that strain of hope that somehow keeps it together. Like 50 Cent once said, get rich or die trying. So the generations pass. If we cannot evolve by passing down our genes, we can at least pass down the material wealth to our children, adding foundational meaning to an otherwise bleak existence punctuated only by the creation of several mediocre paintings. Jeb III is haunted by his ghostly ancestors' apparitions. eating into his dreams and stirring him from an already tumultuous slumber. It's not long before he joins his ancestors in an insignificant tomb. Jeb IV wears a hard hat to shield himself from economic adversity and trades out the grill for a fridge and a shower. After good fortune from winning the lotto, you'd think that would be enough to meet all his needs, right? Wrong. Garden flamingos make for poor conversationalists, and Jeb IV also dies of loneliness and starvation, albeit with more than his father started off. But at least Jeb V has a chance. No surprises here, a valiant effort. And mind you that I'm now in my 5th sim in a chain of people who are unable to feed themselves through art and take their supper with the graves of deceased relatives for social companionship. But at the very least, Jeb V was the final nail in the coffin, pun intended. He achieved fancy living and set the last foundations needed for the generation that would ultimately put it all together. Jebediah Dingleberry VI. It all comes down to this. Finally, a descendant of 5 generations of Dingleberries who has a leg up on the competition. And Jeb VI has something his ancestor didn't have. Man's best friend. Social companionship that will help him leap where his forefathers fell. It's not long before he's creating works of art selling in the 2- and 3-digit price range. Though haunted by multiple poltergeists, he remains focused on his tasks. And his work doesn't suffer when his house is in disrepair. A blessed man. Jeb VI uses this to achieve maximum creativity, a feat unparalleled by any of his ancestors. And he uses this to make over 300 simoleons a day. No easy feat, but how would he make up for his ancestors' sacrifice and restore the family name? Or would his ancestors' unexpiated tears be forgotten, only for their gray hairs to wither and be lost down in the underworld? And so it was on that day that I embarked on a quest. The only way to valiantly restore our fortunes would be to find a wife, and have offspring as numerous as the sands on the beach or the stars in the sky, and exploit them for their creative labor to obtain unfathomable riches, justifying the expense paid by my ancestors with their lifeblood. Fiesta time! I threw a party as a ruse to woo the local women, and how I did swoop among them. And how! There was Persephone Slagathor, or Tiffany Burb, both attractive, but veteran bores lacking in cosmopolitan substance. I cooked and I hosted, and I searched until it was love at first sight. Cassandra blew it. Was it her executive sunglasses, or her sharp, chrome plastic hairdo? Whatever it was, she was hot. Instant wife material. Well, I'm lying. It actually took 4 in-game weeks of constantly inviting her over, doting after her needs because people in The Sims 1 were needy. But let me tell you, that month flew by like a minute. It wasn't long before I popped the question 5 times because she kept refusing, and eventually she agreed. 1 time is all you need, and we hit it off splendidly, like 2 peas in a pod. The bride came with a sizable dowry that added to my painting commissions. But did she know I was secretly using her to create an army of young artists, rivaled only by the tragically short careers of 90s child actors, to avenge the deaths of my ancestors and prove that artists could make money from nothing? Time would tell. Baby time. Kissing, kissing, kissing. When a mom and a dad love each other very much, and the dad wants to abuse the family unit to force his children to paint and earn money, a baby is made. Young Dingleberry. I took care of the child, and for 3 days I boxed out Child Protective Services whenever they attempted to confiscate my infant. I know this is getting really convoluted, but I wanted to find out if there was any feasible way to earn a lot of money. And I'm talking a lot of money in The Sims, from art alone. We're not talking about just getting by, we're talking about abundant wealth. Even if that means I need to raise 8 children and lie to them about how much I love them while subtly brainwashing them into becoming artists. So, seemingly overnight, I role changed from artist to manager. Why waste my time painting when I could train other painters to do my work for me? It's basic leverage, folks. Simply raise 1 child, then train the first child to raise the next child you have for you. Soon, like a developing country, we were rolling in kids. raising other kids, all the while somehow possessing savant-like genius in their artistic ability, able to fetch hundreds of simoleons for their creative work, further solidifying my income and making me a magnate. An emperor in his own right. But at the same time, it wasn't easy. I had to keep my offspring penned in and prevent them from failing out of school or joining the military, or even just deal with the nuisance of Sonny, the tragic clown, a strange and dystopian entertainer who makes you the opposite of happy. Anyway, it was getting to be a bit much, I have to say, and I thought I had proven my point. The answer is yes. You can definitely make a lot of money in The Sims as an artist without a boss, but you'll probably go on a roller coaster of death and sadness, and sacrifice at least a few of your ancestors laying down a foundation, or inherit a small nest egg from which to start. But if you play your cards right, maybe you'll just meet that special someone, and then it's off to the loony bin with you.
Playing The Sims always gave me this sense of progress that every day you were making strides to improve your life station. Whether it was upgrading from a single bed to a double bed, from garden flamingos to expensive statues, or adding a second floor, it never failed to supply me with that sense that the needle was moving forward. But what if we took that to the extreme and started out with nothing, just standing in a 1x1 tile home? There are a lot of varieties of this challenge, but here are my rules. 1. No going outside. That means I need to be surrounded by walls the entire time. 2. Buying and building are allowed, but you still need to be surrounded by walls the whole time you're playing. And 3, no jobs are allowed, and the only way to earn money is through common household objects. Our protagonist is Timothy Smole, inhabitant of the tiniest house. To set everything up, first I cleared out most of the home's lot, making a blank canvas for what was to come next. It's easy enough to construct a 1x1 single square house, but how do you get inside of it? With a door, of course. It may not be a very good door, but it's our door. I walked Timothy Smole into the home, but realized that something was missing. Well, not just something, a lot of things. While you could technically inhabit a 1x1 square home, the only possible action inside of it would be to stand perfectly erect and stare at the wall, or perhaps sleep while standing up. It would be uncomfortable, but it would be possible. In The Sims 1, you simply can't place a table or furniture and somehow squat atop it in the space between the tabletop and the ceiling. That would be ridiculous. So in the interest of getting our protagonist started, I decided it would be in the spirit of the challenge still to give him 1 tile to stand and 1 more for activities. But no more than that. And that's all we'll need anyway. So with my home technically doubled in square footage, I placed a table and a genie lamp. Rub-a-dub-dub, it was time to rub. Not only is there a chance of a genie, it's certain. And to be fair, if you live in the unventilated darkness of a 3-foot by 6-foot sheetrock enclosure with no exit, the only thing that could improve your fortunes is magic. But relying on the spurious generosity of occult demons is laden with risk and uncertainty. And any time you encounter a genie, he'll offer you a choice from a series of 2 options: fire or water, earth or air, work or leisure, money or love, and friends or family. I could explain the risks and benefits of each of these selections, but it's better if you just witness what each does for yourself. Genies are bumbling and unreliable people, and cast their spells right only, less than 50% of the time. I would just have to get lucky at first, and then I could take it from there. And so it came to my first wish: work or leisure. If I picked work, I might gain some skills, which wouldn't really help me. But if I picked leisure and I got lucky, then there'd be a free item I could sell. I had literally nothing to lose. Jackpot. I lucked out. A model railroad set worth 955 simoleons. I cashed out my winnings and used 280 of those simoleons to expand the walls of my home. Then I sold 2 of the walls, effectively doubling the square footage. Technically, I was surrounded by walls the entire time. Also, technically, I bought another genie lamp. In The Sims 1, you can have as many genies as you want. The sky's the limit. There's a genie inhabiting each and every dusty lamp. Every 24 hours, I'd be able to rub my lamps for the chance at another set of wishes. At least, that was the plan. At the stroke of midnight on day 2, get it? Stroke? 'Cause he's rubbing the... I made 2 wishes, one for Earth that misfired and resulted in dead plants, and another for water, which shot off successfully and resulted in a fountain worth 700 simoleons. I wasn't ready for that kind of luxury yet, but I could sell it. Again, my plan was unfolding perfectly, and I continued inching out the square of my property. Technically, here comes that word again, still inside of my house, despite the fact that the structure itself was growing like an expansive multicellular organism. In only 3 days, I had progressed from a 1x1 to a 2x2, and now a 3x3 plot. But we couldn't just keep growing exponentially. That's not sustainable. Our protagonist needed sustenance, or he would die of starvation, loneliness, and heat exhaustion. I purchased a cheap refrigerator and made room in the budget by opting to downgrade to a cheaper variety of table on which to store the new genie lamps. There were going to be a lot of them. It's the first lesson of business, people. Every dollar gets reinvested back into the company to buy more genie lamps, creating a massive, unsustainable bubble that eventually crashes the stock market. This is why we can't have nice things. I lived frugally. I slept on the floor and used garbage for a bed. There was a lot of it too, and it provided good cushioning. After all, I was consuming 6 bags of potato chips per day, and there was no way of getting rid of the garbage. So I managed the space around me, and I consolidated it into 2 piles. The next day, when I wished for money, I received a pot of gold doubloons. But when I wished for leisure, the genie misfired, and flames erupted right behind me. You know, normally I would panic, but I figured out that if it's just 1 tile, don't worry about it. 1 sim can take out that kind of fire, no problem. If it's more than 1 tile, don't ask about that. I bought a garbage disposal, put the trash inside of it, and then sold it for a full refund. Once again, this is why we can't have nice things. The next few days, I got on that grind set. The home grew, and I put space between objects to reduce the fire hazard of living in a hermetically sealed crate. I stored the dead plants on my inaccessible backyard patio to keep a tally of how many wishes had gone awry, and I cultivated a daily routine. First, I soiled myself in the morning, then I ate in the afternoon, and then I slumbered until midnight, when genies were recharged to offer me another set of wishes. My floor was carpeted in bills, trash, and water from the failed wishes, as well as the runoff down my legs from soiling myself. Impossible to distinguish the two. After 1 week, by the time I got up to 7 or 8 genie lamps, I was a busy man. My schedule was packed. There was hardly any downtime to spare, in fact. One time, the genie even set the garbage in the street ablaze. I sealed in a tree because it was getting lonely and I wanted a pet. And after 2 weeks, there were more lamps than a single man could possibly hope to rub in one day. I decided to add blue carpet and blue wallpaper to the house. I expanded the home backward toward the river behind my property, moved the plants to the front yard, and installed windows so that I could at least look at the river, even if I couldn't dip my feet into it. This was a good-looking house, and I availed myself all the amenities. Bed, windows, and at long last a staircase. The staircase wasn't a very good idea, so I had to replace it with a futuristic elevator. This is all to say that I managed to create a loft of my second floor to establish some sort of work-life balance. Maybe I could somehow automate my tasks to concentrate on the lamp rubbing for me while I enjoyed the fruits of their labor upstairs. By day 50, I finally had enough wealth that I had made it. I had finally achieved the American dream, a home overflowing with offensively expensive items. But the fires were becoming out of hand. Something had to change. I needed help. There was more than I could handle. But even if I couldn't get help from the people outside of my home, there was always plan B. So I decided to sell all of my luxury possessions and allocate the funds toward a robot butler. Every day, he worked on chores, while I worked on sitting in a hot tub and watching TV. At first, it was the source of inspiration and free time, but I began relying more on labor-saving technology with the purchase of Bonehilda, the skeleton servant. So after my hot tub got too hot and burst into flames, I struggled to deal with the increasingly risky fires of more than 2 squares, almost certain to immolate your sim if he tries to extinguish it. Where were my robot butler and skeleton servant when I most needed them? I was doing all of the hard work. I was the one risking my life to put out those fires.
Blue paint, unfortunately, isn't fireproof, despite the fact that you might make a case for why it would be, right? The truth is that you need people in your life. Sanguine people with red flesh and blood who make you laugh or cry or even get angry at you some of the time. Without people, you'll die of loneliness. They say there's another family living at 10 Sim Lane these days. The Dingleberries, they're called. And they have each other. After they bore witness to the horror show of a front yard, the first thing they added was a front door. They considered keeping those antiques they discovered in the lower floor of the home, but the mom protested. She wasn't into collecting and thought they smelled like ash. It still stands there like Ozymandias. Anyway, that's what I think would happen if you tried to keep yourself surrounded by walls all the time in The Sims, or if you tried to play through with just one item. Last minute shout out to YouTuber friends Spiffing Brit and Call Me Kevin, who coincidentally did Sims challenges very similar to this while I was trying mine. But I thought that they came at it from even more interesting angles, so go check out theirs as well. EA Games. Challenge everything. This video is about survival. The Sims 1 was extremely difficult. Sims fly off the rails because they're hungry, tired, and lonely. So how challenging would it be to play the game with a complete house full of 8 children, unable to cook for themselves, hire maid and cleaning services, among a plethora of other handicaps? Who will be the most capable, powerful child? I got this idea from another YouTuber named SaryaFan93. The Home Alone Challenge. 8 children, no adults. Who will survive the cops, the nefarious clown, and the inferno? Day 1 commenced with a great deal of childish activity. Between 7 a.m. when we began and 8 a.m. when the school bus arrived, the children attacked the home, donning VR headsets and climbing like orangutans on the jungle gym, much to the disappointment of Mortimer and Bella Goth. Their new neighbors were not at home. From 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., school is in session. Then the youngsters returned home only to impede traffic for the angriest of bus drivers. It's all your nightmares in one. 8 children, unsupervised. Like a psychological experiment in anarchy. The girls participate in team and relationship building exercises. Pushmeat and Flapaboo read books together. Octavia sits on the couch and stares blankly at both of them. Not reading. This is neutral behavior. Not really productive, but not destructive either. I've decided to just observe the children and make mental notes this first day. The boys engage in physical and competitive recreation, climbing on the outdoor playset, playing a risky game of VR, or fighting over control of the doorway like the Panama Canal. Dukakis played with dolls alone. Maybe he wasn't talking with the other children, but at least he wasn't causing a mess either. The chips came out of the fridge. Since children cannot cook, there would be no stoving or microwaving of any kind. The only option on the menu is potato chips. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I decided to intervene and send Flapaboo to the backyard telescope. A broken and overpowered item that can make your kids from stupid to smart in The Sims. The evening continued with video games, then swimming, then video games after swimming, and concluded with a midnight snack of, yes, chips again. Finally, at 7 p.m., Dukakis, Cornbread, and Peabody decided to embark on a productive hour of finger painting, very profitable at about 13 simoleons. Around midnight, the house was a mess, and someone had broken the sink. No one took responsibility, so Pushmeat took it upon herself to swab the poop deck. It's a school night, so bedtime's at 3 a.m. The sun rose on day 2 and everyone sprang out of bed. Somewhat rested, but still full of childish energy from the first day. Only Cornbread missed the bus. He spent the day peering into the telescope, looking to the skies for answers while his peers wasted their time at school. I'm not lying, if you just keep your children at home in The Sims and have them look out the telescope all day, that's basically homeschooling them. Upon arrival home, the stupid children stood in front of the bus again. After about 24 hours of a childish explosion of pleasure-filled activity, the reality of life without grown-ups begins to set in. Mood decays. The alpha male claims his territory on the other boys. Weaker betas. Peabody is a slob. I decided to have Flapaboo call in a pizza to help rally the children, who are incapable of preparing a large meal to feed one another. I also called the cops to make sure we could get support in case anyone attacked the house. It was becoming clear to me that well-behaved and upright children like Pushmeat or Cornbread were capable of a productive existence in the adult world, able to act convincingly mature on the phone and receive pizzas from delivery men, or even just take care of the other children. On the other hand, maniacs like Huckleberry spawned chaos by staking claim of a corner in the bathroom, like a troll under a bridge, and prevented the other children from accessing the shower, sink, and toilet. Garbage piled up. There was still a child in the pool at 3:48 a.m. Dawn rose again on the third day. Dukakis ordered a pizza an hour before the school bus would arrive. Lunacy, but also a pretty baller idea. The school bus came and went. At 3 p.m., the unwashed and unhappy children arrived home to discover the arrival of Sonny the Tragic Clown, a classic Sims NPC, the nefarious visitor who arrives when you and your Sims mood drops too low. Most clowns cheer people up. Sonny is a real Debbie Downer. He upsets people by trespassing and participates in suspicious, borderline illegal activity. It started with innocuous but creepy behavior, like leaning over people's beds and coughing on them. Or standing in a vital doorway and crying. He's annoying, and he makes everything worse. Bounded neither by night or day, at 3:53 a.m. he was still active, party bombing the kids and disturbing everyone's slumber, then obstructing more pathways with his stupid clown body. I tried trapping him in a room with panels of sheetrock. Too bad. He teleported away. What about separating the children's bedrooms? That might work so he couldn't party bomb all of us again and wake everyone up at once. Of course, this also meant that he could physically trap people in their cells by crying and coughing in front of them, which he did. I tried to ensnare him at a pool party. I failed to trap him. What about calling the cops? That didn't work either. Law enforcement is powerless against a slippery clown. Even the children with the highest executive functioning skills simply gave up on a good night's sleep. They did better by settling down in the backyard and lying prone to rest. And so Sonny continued his reign of terror, physically preventing Huckleberry from attending school after an entire night of coughing out the window by his bedside. So after one final session of virtual reality, Huck was unfortunately forced off to join the military due to his lack of attendance and failing grades. Roaches. Garbage. When Sonny picked up the children when they arrived home from school, I knew it was time for a counteroffensive. If anything, a clown can't resist a good birthday party. So I moved the table and chairs outside and constructed a shack around them, even hanging up his portrait on one wall to recognize him as the guest of honor. Cake was purchased. Gaiety was planned. Whose birthday was it? Well, it had to be, the kid with the lowest grades. Celebration! Cake eating! Sonny was seated nice and deep in the room where the festive birthday firework was launched at the carpet. Pandemonium. Several piles of ashes and unfortunate visits from the Grim Reaper later, Sonny narrowly escaped his physical demise. But, as every good Sims 1 player knows, art imitates real life. If your smile's a frown, then down with the clown. What I'm trying to say is, if you burn the portrait, that destroys his soul. Sonny was finally defeated. Gone forever. Speaking of which, we were also down to only 4 of the remaining participants. All of the surviving children were smart, but the rough home situation had prevented them from attaining a higher GPA. Peabody had a D, and in a bad mood was in the express lane for military school. You see, even if you go to school, but you're in a bad mood, you go down 1 notch of a letter grade each day. That's just how the American educational system works, folks. Who was the most powerful child? I decided to interfere and turn up the heat in this metaphorical oven a bit more. After all, necessity brings out the true nature of people's character. So I squandered the last of the money on ordering a deluge of pizzas to our doorway. Pizza, pizza, pizza. On the one hand, this would coat the entire home in a layer of delicious cheese, and allow the child capable of eating the fastest an opportunity to sprint ahead of his peers and stage an exciting comeback at school. On the other hand, it would galvanize the other children, unable to eat as fast, and starve them of vital pizza required to maintain a high GPA. So I staged this evolutionary experiment. The board was set. I demolished the entire house to have enough money for what would come next. The perfect arena to test my Sims mettle. All the best furniture. One for everyone. 3 golden toilets. 3 VR headsets. 3 fine chairs. 3 fridges. And a fence of caring, loving teddy bears to shield them from sadness and adversity. With a robot butler and a skeleton maid, which child could pull herself back from the brink and come back without failing out of school? Conversations were had, games were played, telescopes were looked into, refrigerators were reached inside of. The first 2 girls saw off Lil Debbie in short order. She couldn't take the heat. One more failing day of bad mood at school, and she was off to the academy. But what came next, I didn't see coming. Sabotage and skullduggery. Pushmeat drained the other girl for her social meter, then boxed her into the bathroom with a bad mood so that she was the only one to go to school able to pass the class, barely with a D-. Textbook takedown. One of the most brutal backstabbings in Sims history. Pushmeat was, indeed, the most powerful child. Anyway, time to save. I don't know what I'm going to do with this or the rest of the neighborhood where I've completed all kinds of bizarre science experiments in this game, but she's destined for great things, I'm sure. Beating a game always seemed like a major accomplishment back when I was a kid. And The Sims 1, developed by Maxis and published by EA in 2000, was no exception. Today I'm going back to revisit the way I experienced it as a youngster. So instead of having 100 babies or doing a rags to riches challenge, I'm just gonna see how my adult brain handles trying to beat this game for the most authentic Sims experience. So I spawned in as my Sims 1 alter ego, Mr. Ambiguous. Mr. Kanye Ambiguous. And before we begin, quick shout out to my YouTuber friend Call Me Kevin, who inspired this video. Meet Kanye Ambiguous. $10,000 in his pocket, or really 10,000 simoleons. No job, and he's starting off at a little house I purchased in northern Sim Valley. Maybe later on we'll build our own house, but for now, we don't have that kind of money. A clean slate and no objectives. The first thing I did was look for a job. In The Sims, Maxis starts you off with almost no goals or objectives. It's kind of like real life, but enough hints to extrapolate what might be a reasonable answer. The newspaper. You should probably apply for a job. Visiting neighbors. Wouldn't it be nice to have some friends? Maybe a love interest? And an empty house. Fill that up with some nice furniture, you dingus. I had a tie on, but I also had a long ponytail to show that I'm a professional man with substance. But in my time off, I'm okay with just letting it flow. I tried to prevent Kanye from wasting his time on useless activities like reading, and I had him enter the house to take care of his needs. In he went, doing normal stuff like washing his hands. Why don't you find a job, Kanye? Oh wait, there he goes. Job in the military. Yes, that's the right idea. I get the first job that you read about. Oh, amazing. Kanye has joined the military. In we went to the house to start spending money to make way for my normal life. My movements were completely normal and natural, and they didn't make anyone nervous to be around. I bought burglar alarms for every room in the house because I was paranoid that someone might try to rob poor Kanye. Then it was a bed and a barrel for a nightstand. Good old barrel to put my alarm clock on top of. A landline, since this game was made in 2000. Before you know it, Mortimer and Bella Goth arrived to greet me, so I waved at them from the door, improving my social score. Eventually, that would get me promoted in the military. And then I received an unexpected call with a surprise windfall of 1,400 simoleons. And so I bought a couch and a TV to entertain the Goths with my unexpected good fortune. And I took a trolley to the old town to adopt a dog. I named it Cat and returned home with my first real companion, man's best friend. More like, man's only friend. Cat considered my entire house a toilet, except the toilet, of course, which he considered his water dish. I spent the night sitting alone at home watching TV, trying to get into a good enough mood for a promotion at work. I bought an oven, I cooked dinner, and I retired for slumber. When I awoke at 3 a.m. and prepared for work, a Humvee picked me up for military operations. Unfortunately, I wasn't happy enough to get a promotion in the military on my first day. The truth was that I was a lonely man, and a poor man. I had no time for meeting other people, so maybe that was it. I made my goal to get as happy as possible so that I could earn that valuable promotion. Maybe then I'd have enough money to get even happier, and then I'd have more time to meet other Sims and make friends. That was where the real action was. And so I invested my money into ordering a pizza, so that I could save the time cooking to do other things that would make me even happier, like watching TV, or settling in the tub for a nice hot bath. That way I could just answer the door when the pizza arrived and focus on eating it and enjoying it instead of cooking it. It required days of labor and the purchase of expensive, unnecessary furniture to cure my depression, but I did come out of it, and I emerged, metamorphosed like a butterfly from a cocoon, promoted to Elite Special Forces, then Drill Sergeant. I even hired a maid and a gardener, since those tasks were now beneath me, since I was such an important, muscular, charismatic army man. I even bought a bench press to develop my pectoral muscles and intimidate anyone who walked into my home. Thus, The Sims teaches persistence. Even if you keep setting your house on fire, don't give up. Keep trying to cook. And soon, I was making the big bucks in my cushy government job. And before you know it, I'd been promoted to junior officer. But the next few promotions required climbing a new ladder. The social ladder. Yes, it seemed that my Sigma male grind of lifting weights, building charisma, and staring at myself in the mirror were drawing to an end. It was time to seek attention and impress other people with how outgoing I was. Look out, world. Here comes Kanye Ambiguous. I sprang to action and threw a party at my house to meet all the locals. I didn't have enough food, and I also didn't have enough chairs. But I did what I had to, and I met Eldon Hick, the man who would become my very first friend. I went to bed that night before my guests left to give them the message that they had overstayed their welcome. But before you know it, I was spending the next 12 days furiously dialing the phone to keep inviting Eldon Hick over to my house so that I could compliment him for 4 hours so that he would like me more. All until he actually became distraught every night since he hadn't eaten or used the bathroom because there was no time when I was berating him through the evening with a string of unending declarations about how much I admired him. At last, I had said enough nice things to make Eldon into a permanent friend, and I received the promotion shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, when you get promoted, you need to make even more friends. It was starting to become a lot to sustain at once. Now life was turning into a labyrinth of professional checkboxes and social dynamics to navigate. Why did I need 3 friends? Just more alibis to prove that I wasn't crazy? Alright, Will Wright, master game designer, I'll play your little game. So I made my way up a dizzying array of military ranks. Flight officer, 1 friend. Senior officer, 3 friends. All the way up to commander, requiring 5 friends. What kind of person has time to be an army commander and have 5 friends? Every night I went to bed, dreading the ultimatum that I would usually receive from Eldon Hick or Lucas Towney, that our friendship was officially over. Then, to make amends, I'd usually just invite him over for a slice of pizza. And like that, everything was back to normal.
Yuck.
But that would make me fall behind on my weightlifting, or my reading, and be in a bad mood the next day at work, further distancing me from the mirage of promotions, the illusion of progress. Ultimately, I decided to hire a butler. Maybe it would help me catch up on things, giving away almost all of the money I was making every day, just to sustain my outrageous standard of living and offensive self-improvement. Then I was promoted to astronaut. Now I needed to maintain 6 friendships. So being an astronaut was a real pain in the astronaut, if you know what I mean. So much responsibility. Even general, who in their right mind could cultivate 8 friendships? Simply too many. And for only $650 a day. So after months of deliberation, I decided to abandon my entire career to pursue my real dreams of becoming an entertainer, a musical sensation. Maybe that was it. Now I didn't have to dote after Eldon Hick or Lucas Towney, calling them every single day to make sure they still liked me as much as the day before. Now I could throw a party to impress everyone with my musical virtuosity. Now everyone could gather around
See what an amazing pianist I had become after only 10 days of training. Me. It wasn't enough. Every day, my bills were getting more expensive, taking care of my improved home more difficult to maintain, and I hardly had any time when I got home from work to pursue any of my personal passions. All that was left was this mindless grind toward capital gains, social standing, anything to get my hands on a trophy that said, "You did a good job." But the target always kept moving, until, that is, I stopped getting promoted. How could this be? I had maxed out every single skill tree. I don't know why it happened, but at some point the game just stopped promoting me altogether. No longer could I sustain an extravagant lifestyle of having a butler clean up after me, or pay the wealth tax on owning a golden toilet. I mean, I was an incredibly talented man, but I had been financially severed from the established institutions. No job could feed me anymore. So I did what I had to, and I started selling everything I owned. My VR headset, my robot butler, my fridge, my bed, and I used the proceeds to invest in the only ways I could still make a living, where the man couldn't stop me, painting landscapes and building garden gnomes. And I slept underneath the stars on the ground in a pool of my own urine, and I found it warm, inviting, and agreeable. And, ladies and gentlemen, it's been exactly that way ever since. I'm going to try to survive in The Sims 1 living inside of a one-tile wide house. The inspiration for this challenge comes from my YouTuber friend Call Me Kevin, who did it in The Sims 4. But after my single-tile wide house full of children led to a lot of boxing out and starvation in one of my last challenges, I thought it would be interesting to give it a shot again in the original game, where the pathfinding is laughable and bizarre. Is it possible to meet all of a Sim's needs without going insane while living in a claustrophobic pathfinding nightmare? Creating our Sim. Meet the Hugh-Man family. It's a hyphenated last name. Hugh-Man. Our protagonist, Jack Human. Okay, so Jack Human, spawns into Sim Valley on day 1, eager to expand his walls. Literally. I searched the paper for a job. Sometimes, it feels like people value me only because of what I can produce. But the truth is that I'm passionate about my work. That is to say, I signed up for an exciting law officer career. Zippity-doo-dah! I entered the house in a flurry. Work started at 11 p.m., so I had some time to kill. A lot of it. But with nothing inside to occupy my attention at all, and my needs dropping fast, I emerged from the doorway to shake hands with Bella Goth and make some friends with the neighbors. Maybe raise my social meter before work. If I could get into a good mood and be happy enough by the time I went to work, I might get a promotion. So from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. when the work car arrives, it's busy. Between 10 and 11 a.m., I schmoozed the Goths, sucking out their social. Then I started planning out how I'd meet the rest of my needs. Inside of my house, a renovation, still technically one tile wide, and a chair for sitting on, along with more home decor. But by noon, as I was sitting in my chair, I realized that I was nearly out of money, and I still had 11 long hours until work without eating. So with no source of food, I sold the chair and the painting for a full refund and a cupboard. After eating a $5 bag of chips, I still had 9 hours to go, and I desperately needed the bathroom. So I just kept buying and selling my furniture for a complete refund, because you can do that here, until I settled on a nice armchair and a television set where I could dig in and suck the pleasure out of the TV for a few hours. I am a sad, lonely man. Still 5 hours left until work, and my hygiene was dropping fast. I couldn't afford a shower. Too expensive. So I just bought a sink and started washing my hands over and over and over until my hands were flawless and perfect. Sadly, clean as my hands were, I was not promoted after my first day of work. Life is existential torture, and the American dream is a lie. Sometimes, no matter how much you improve yourself, you just need to stay on that grind set. So I embarked on the meaningless drudgery of just showing up every day for a paycheck. Discipline. 240 simoleons. Is not sexy, but consistency gave me the breathing room to hatch my master plan. Of all my needs, the only one I needed to hit the baseline of staying alive
was hunger. And at a minimum, I could survive off of about $5 worth of potato chips a day, netting a daily profit of 235 simoleons. Wow. Uncomfortable? Yes. But I could compensate by just wetting myself in the yard and then sleeping in the middle of the road. And so that's the way it was. I began hoarding cash. And honestly, I liked it. Maybe you too can savor the urine scent of austerity. Maybe you can feel the dirt, lack of carpeting in an upwardly mobile, impoverished lifestyle. Maybe even you can taste the pavement of self-improvement. Sure enough, before long, by day 4, I was able to expand the walls toward a more comfortable habitation. Cushy, cavernous, and above all, expansive. I kept turning the fridge the other way so that Jack, our protagonist, wouldn't eat too many chips and just waste all of the money on making himself more comfortable. So often we seek comfort in life, but improving one's life station is not a comfortable experience. It's fraught with hardship and many nights of near starvation. Eventually, when I bought a telephone, Jack just kept calling up pizzas because he was starving. But then I never answered the door because I just couldn't afford the pizza when it arrived. So it was baby steps. One austere night of sleeping on the dirt in the middle of the floor, followed up by a day of sleeping while standing up. The monetary savings afforded me the cushy embrace of a recliner and a television to boot. Suddenly, luck came my way, and I was getting calls of unexpected windfalls. Fortune. I used the extra dough to carve out new branching paths, still only one tile wide in my labyrinth of a home. New luxuries, like a shower. I was able to shower with a fedora on my head. Drunk with good fortune, I began taking stock of how much I'd improved. By now, I'd knocked out a few of our protagonist's needs: comfort, entertainment, cleanliness, and technically bladder, depending upon how you want to look at it. But if you want to get promoted in The Sims 1, you need to be happy with the room you're in when the carpool arrives in the morning. So I just started putting up decorative rugs on the sheetrock outside to disguise the hideous appearance of my strange domicile. What more of my needs could I meet? Sleep. Since I couldn't technically sleep in a bed, as that would mean making the house more than one tile wide, I instead decided that I would just give up sleeping entirely and replace it with drinking like 10 espressos a day. Espresso after espresso after espresso. Somehow, I was still alive. And technically, I could now remain awake indefinitely. Sleep is for lazy and unmotivated peasants. Another one of my needs checked off the list. It seemed like my life was improving. I'd knocked out so many of my needs, and even padded my pad with pimpin' green carpets. But just when it seemed like my life was getting so much better, an unexpected snafu reared its ugly head. The kitchen was the only way to get a full hunger bar, and I couldn't arrange my furniture in such a way as to cook breakfast. If I couldn't eat, I'd never get promoted. Unfazed, I conspired to hatch my plan B, selling my fridge and stove, pinching pennies, and replacing my appliances with a cupboard to make a return to my former degenerate potato chip eating lifestyle. Inch by inch, I would nickel and dime my way to a promotion. And so I saved up loads more dough. Cold, hard cash. For the next step would be a mad rush. I sprang to the phone, calling every single person in town to a party to suck all of their social out of them. And I ordered a bunch of pizzas, and I placed them all over the floor for my guests. I was going to get so fed and happy from my pizza party that they'd have no choice but to promote me the next day at work. Party time. Woo! 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 I yelled in desperate attempts to get happier. But alas, it was all for naught. Mortimer Goth and his stupid child boxed me out of the entrance, curtailing my attempts to suck the social out of everyone in town. And then I fell asleep on the floor. I literally just tried it all again, but I accidentally put the pizza in the hallway where no one could gain access to it. Then I stood on top of the pizza as I chatted with Peter, whom I also couldn't get past, and who was also standing in a pizza. I had wasted over $100 trying to buy things to make myself happy and use other people for my happiness. All just in a desperate attempt to get promoted at work. But maybe it was getting too convoluted. There had to be another way. And there was. After getting dropped off from another damn day at work, falling asleep in the road, and then soiling myself, I cleaned up the shameful pizza mess and phoned the old town. It was time to call in reinforcements. Cats are objectively nicer than people, so I adopted a kitty cat for only $3.99. Goodbye, sadness. Goodbye, gaping void of loneliness. So the cat and I boarded the trolley to return home as companions, pushing each other to greater achievements. That is to say, day by day, the cat gradually improved my mood until I was, for all intents and purposes, permanently happier. Scientific fact, and although the cat often blocked the hallway and trapped me between the toilet and the shower, I forgave the cat, because felines are beings of pure gaiety, merriment, and love. Now it was the time, and although my one-tile-wide house was objectively the worst possible configuration ever created, I overcompensated by drinking espressos, ordering pizzas only for myself, showering, then getting boxed out and being forced to pet the cat. So after missing work and 48 hours of meticulous preparations, running between the espresso machine and the chair, I finally managed to be given the rating of good for my mood at work. But I had to stick the landing the next day. With only one day of work left, I tactically positioned the expensive chair outside the house, near my decorative rug and family portrait, at long last, sealing my promotion at 4 green mood bars. So, the next time you're passed up for a promotion at work, ask yourself, would I be willing to eat an entire cheesy pizza all by myself to get promoted? That's just what it takes to be great.
Ever since I first played it as a kid, I always thought The Sims implicitly laid out the plans for living a successful life. The American dream. Even if you start out penniless, you can work your way up through the ranks, making money, raising a family, and handing off a legacy to the next generation for a brighter future. Through effort, grit, and a frugal mindset, you can build something to give your descendants the foundation to thrive. It always seemed funny, though, that way Maxis designed the game. Slowly, when you rise from poverty to wealth, your possessions start to eat up more of your time and energy. Suddenly, everything starts breaking down, and now you can't even afford to keep up with your own raised standard of living. Decadence, temptation, and luxury. It harps on a set of existential dilemmas. Can we truly make progress from one generation to the next? And will we ever be content? Or will the natural human inclination to desire more and be agitated eventually devour us before we ever reach our moving goalpost? So I embark today on a new adventure to explore some of these questions. As our protagonist, Mr. Ambiguous. Mr. Slagathor Ambiguous. I spawned in on the first day to my property, 5 Sim Lane. A giant pile of dirt in the middle of the neighborhood. A total nobody. No money, no job, no friends, and no romantic interests to speak of. After the mail carrier delivered the paper, I perused the news for the only available job. As team mascot on the pro athlete career track, this was not a good job. It was a bad job, but I had to take it anyway or I would starve to death. But necessity, after all, is the ultimate motivator. I continued the morning by selling some of the magical items the Magic Man dropped off at my house for a free 572 simoleons. There's nothing like the sheer excitement when you turn nothing into something. And purchasing my first grill for burgers to secure my subsistence, I would taste the meat of progress, the buns of upward mobility, the ketchup of motivation. Hungry as I was for more, I spent the rest of the night preparing for work by cleaning up cat urine on the edge of my sidewalk. Then I purchased a sign to keep away wild animals, improving my surroundings. Around the middle of the night, when I stopped crying and pissing myself, I fell asleep for a few hours on the sidewalk to get some shut-eye in before work. When the carpool arrived, I made my way off for my first exciting day at my career. Lesson 1. If you want to achieve upward mobility in life, you have to live below your means. So instead of buying a bed for its lavish excess and comfort, instead I purchased a telephone. Yes, a telephone. forsaking comforts in the hopes that instead I could use the money to answer the phone and have people send me money. I returned home from a hard day of work, 100 simoleons richer, and I purchased a recliner so I wouldn't have to sleep on the ground anymore. Classy, yet frugal. I also purchased a burglar alarm since, God forbid, someone should come and steal one of my valuable items. Then I ended the day by peeing my pants and falling asleep on the dirt again. The next day I returned to work in the carpool once again, urine-scented and ready for more. My investment in the telephone paid off almost immediately when I received an 800 simoleon boon from some stock options over a random phone call. I reinvested the funds into a shower, an outdoor shower. After all, any shower is an outdoor shower if you just don't have a house. And a toilet, after all, would be unnecessary since I could just continue to pee my pants and wash the bodily fluids off myself. The next night, I slept under the stars and continued improving my life with a pleasure box. A TV I could watch while relaxing in my recliner, multitasking effectively for both comfort and pleasure at the same time. Now, most of my needs were met. Sleep? On the ground. Urine and feces? Also on the ground. Food? Burgers from the grill. Pleasure and comfort would be provided, of course, by my recliner and TV. But I still felt lonely and sad, so I would need a pet. I called for a trolley and made my way downtown to buy a dog at the local pet store. I accidentally named the dog 31, but I'm just going to stick with that without explanation. 31 and me were great friends. He was, after all, my only friend. And so I continued my exciting grind up the career ladder. As I worked, opportunity struck when more random people kept calling me on the phone to send me money. Gradually, I acquired a bed, more furniture, and I was even able to enclose myself behind 4 walls. The door wasn't very good at all. It was a bead door, like a decorative bead door. Now, you might look at this house and say to yourself, that house is a piece of crap. But it was my piece of crap. And perhaps more importantly, owning just a few possessions made me actually savor every little improvement, no matter how minuscule. My toilet. Now I wouldn't have to poop on the ground anymore. My table. Now I could sit down while I ate my meals rather than having to stand up. All these little improvements helped me muster up the good mood to look for a better job in the newspaper as a test subject in the science career track. So now I could earn a little extra dough on the side. One thing led to another, and before you know it, I'd pimped out my pad with actual wallpaper, flooring, and a personal computer to top it all off. I had shuffled through many jobs multiple times, making my way at last into the highly lucrative military career track, and painting fine art on the side to get some extra cash. I lived the grind set. Every day, I made gains on my Bowflex, harnessing the power of daily discipline to develop a stronger body and a sharpened mind. I would perfect myself one way or another. And though my home was humble, I made of it a comfortable habitation. I carved gnomes and purchased inexpensive yet attractive flamingos for my front yard to strengthen my resolve and improve my mood every day before the carpool arrived for work. Thus, through careful planning and frugal budgeting and fastidious discipline, all directed toward the perfection of the self, I was able to earn several promotions when my superiors witnessed my progress to elite forces, drill instructor, and ultimately junior officer. Which, pause, I have to say at this point in time, Slagathor Ambiguous had a pretty great life as far as most things are concerned. Single, good earning potential, and unburdened by messy relationships and outside responsibilities. It was an upwardly mobile, if sometimes a little bit lonely life. But the existential burden reared its ugly head once again. What was all this progress for? What were all these gnomes for? What was this ornate $6,000 fountain doing in my front yard for? Now, roughly speaking, according to the American dream, the purpose of our lives is to own more things and make more money in order to hand them off to the next generation. I needed to work harder if I were going to make this world worth living in for my future offspring.
So I set about the gargantuan task of sculpting a house that was large and aspirational. Even if I couldn't yet fill it with furniture or even afford to create it all yet, I could at least set my expectations high. I laid out my plans, but now I had a whole new set of burdens. I couldn't afford all the things I wanted to own, so I just started living out on the lawn again. I also had to give up my career as a military officer since it would never scale to the pay levels required to meet my new, expensive visions of luxury and family. Instead, I had to take up career as a hacker, which was more demanding and claimed an unfortunately long 9 hours of my day, leaving little room for building my skills outside and making friends outside of work. This all despite the pressures that job promotions came with. Make more friends to make more money. I bought a hot tub to make friends in and threw a party at my house, but I didn't even have time to get into the tub or even go to my own party because I was too busy working. On top of that, I had an underlying abrasive personality. I was great at grinding my skills and making money, but I was bad at making friends, and even when I did get into my own hot tub with other people, they were repulsed by me. Imagine being ostracized in your own hot tub. What was all this progress for if there would be no one to share it with? Still, despite all the unpleasantness, I did manage to ascend the career ladder, even if it took multiple vacations to maintain all the friendships with Sims who kept threatening to stop being my friend if I didn't invite them over every 20 minutes. Continued effort in one direction, after all, yields results, and at last I had ascended the entire hacker career path to the ultimate information overlord at 1,550 simoleons a day. The highest paying job in the game. But since I hardly had time to talk to anyone, let alone make any friends outside of work, I had to quit my career to finally take the time to court the only woman in the neighborhood who would love me, Claire Charming. Unfortunately, we had nothing in common, but she was just very available. There hadn't been any time in my career to make friends either, let alone relationships, so I was also bitter and old and angry. I had to overcompensate for my lack of social skills by purchasing lavish and luxurious furniture, an ornate kitchen and dining room set, a flat-screen TV. I even bought a swath of genie lamps to make multiple wishes a day that she would fall in love with me. Almost none of this worked, so I resorted to buying a very expensive set of diamond rings to present her with after each of my failed social interactions, all culminating in me asking her to marry me, which I attempted multiple times, but she dodged with excuses like, "I'm too hungry to get married." But after 5 or 6 attempts, I eventually succeeded through persistence alone. Happily wed, I urinated on the floor immediately in celebration upon the marital ceremony's conclusion. Finally, months of working, all culminating in this. Sure, my career was falling apart and I had sunk every last dollar of my life earnings into buying a set of diamond rings to make Claire Charming find me more attractive, but it had to be worth it, right? Right. The grim reality, as it turned out, married life wasn't worth it at all, since my abrasive personality soured every interaction and I had to resort to buying more diamond rings, ultimately going bankrupt in lukewarm attempts to rekindle our tenuous relationship. It couldn't have all been for nothing. If married life soured, perhaps having a child would bring us together. Yes, something to unite us on common ground. A child. All my efforts had to lead somewhere. Unfortunately, this also failed because the child cried constantly and demanded constant attention I was incapable of meeting. And ultimately, Child Protective Services also confiscated our child due to outright neglect, never to be seen again. So jobless, loveless, and penniless, our protagonist, Slagathor Ambiguous, was left with nothing. Was it all in vain? Yes. That is to say, it wasn't worth it. That old cliche of upward mobility. But maybe the good life, the one worth living, wasn't the one with a family, a picket fence, a stable job, and 2.5 kids. What if it was something hidden away back in time? What if it was the life we had all along, hidden among the gnomes in the front yard? Anyway, I'm Ambiguous Amphibian. A big thanks to my patrons who possess exceeding charisma. Until next time.